Hi, I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. Thank you for joining us today for our video. This is about the halfway point in your Indiana General Assembly. On Monday, the House will have the final deadline for third reading or final votes on bills. On Tuesday, the Senate will have its final reading for third readings or final deadline to pass all live Senate bills in the Senate. So after this week, you'll want to call your representative about Senate bills and your senator about House bills because they switch. And after Tuesday, the House and Senate will not be in session. They're taking a few days off at this halfway point. I'll do a video this coming Friday to cover a few things. And then next week, the 6th, starting the 6th, they will start up again with committee hearings and probably get somewhat of a slow start, as they typically do when they start doing committee hearings, but we'll watch and see if they pick up any of the issues we're watching. So I want to mention 4 bills today. I've got my stack of bills here. First bill I have not talked too much about, but it's in all the news, and it's kind of the big issue. It's the one issue they have to pass constitutionally, and that is House Bill 1001, also known as the state budget. It's a huge bill. It's over 200 pages long, regarding all sorts of state spending. And as you may have seen, what the media is focused on largely in this bill, and as always is the case, it's education funding. The House passed budget, which passed 66 to 29, increases funding for public schools by 6%. That's a huge amount. A lot of times we're talking 2 or 3%. So there's an enormous amount of money going to public schools, public school funding in House Bill 10001. I don't think the Senate will change that too much. I could be wrong, but I think they're still going to keep a significant amount of increase, and that's an increase over the last budget by 6%. I think they'll probably stay similar in the Senate. Could be wrong, but it will be certainly an increase over the previous budget, which was an increase over the previous budget. In fact, in my 30 years down at the State House, I don't know that I've ever seen a budget, regardless of the economic times, that didn't increase funding for public education. And so you're going to see that happen. But in that bill, and what the media is focused on a lot, the House has passed a measure to increase funding for school vouchers, making them almost universal, which I support. I support the free market. I think competition is good. Now, 90% of kids will probably stay in a public school because A, they're either happy with the public school, or B, they frankly don't have alternatives where they live. But the voucher proposal in House Bill 10001 would increase vouchers to families making up to $220,000, which would cover about 96% of the kids in school in Indiana would be eligible for a voucher. Now, not all of them will take it, of course. Most of them won't. But it does put some free market principles in competition with government schools, which I think is helpful. You know, we consumers live on choice in America. This gives parents more choices. That's House Bill 10001. We'll see what the Senate does. There is some support for vouchers. They make that clear in the Senate for school choice, but I think they may trim this back a little. I don't like that personally. I like the House budget, but I think it's a good thing, but we'll see what the Senate does. There's always this back and forth that will go right up to the last day in April, and that's when you see the final vote on the budget. So there'll be a lot of changes ahead, but the House passed their budget on a party line vote of 66 to 29. Now, one thing happened that passed yesterday. On Wednesday, there was an amendment offered to the budget that shocked a lot of people because they weren't expecting it. It's an issue I dealt with back in the 90s. And it regards funding to Indiana University for the Kinsey Institute, which is a sex research organization founded by Dr. Alfred Kinsey. If you know anything about Alfred Kinsey, the guy was a messed up dude. He wanted to change the morals of America with his 2 books, and frankly, he did. But in his book on sexuality and the human male, he had some things in there that were flat out disgusting. It's called The Children of Table 34. If you want to learn more about that, simply go to YouTube, type in The Children of Table 34. There's a 30-minute movie in there about what happened to those kids who were sexually molested. Kinsey worked with pedophiles. He didn't hide that. He worked with prisoners. And he recorded things that pedophiles did not just to children, but to babies. It's not an easy watch, but frankly, this is not something state funding should go for. If the Kinsey Institute should exist, and it will, it can do private donations. That's not what taxpayer dollars should go for sex research. That's a waste of public tax dollars. So an amendment was offered and was passed on the House floor. So that goes to the Senate as part of House Bill 10001. We'll see a lot of debate over it. We'll see what the Senate does with it. But legislators in the past have offered bills to do this and didn't succeed, but they put a floor amendment up and it was adopted into the budget. So we'll see what happens with defunding the Kinsey Institute with state tax dollars and your tax dollars. Let them get private donations. IU's got enormous endowments. They can fund that on their own. Taxpayers shouldn't have to do that. But again, if you want to learn more about that, and it's not easy to watch, but I would recommend the YouTube video, The Children of Table 34. Multiple books have been written about Alfred Kinsey and what he did that was not ethical in his research as an advocate for lowering the age of consent and the idea that children are sexual beings at birth. That was his ideology, and we've reaped the consequences from that for years to come when he wrote that in the 40s and 50s. So that's House Bill 10001. The next bill, House Bill 1407, is an important bill. That's a parental rights bill. It passed the House yesterday, 58-33. This is a bill I've talked about before. It says that parents have the fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their child. Most people agree with that. I think that's not super controversial. Even some of the Democrats who spoke against the bill said they like that part of the bill, not against that. The hitch that they don't like is, which is an important part of this bill because it involves an actual case, and I think it would involve cases in days to come, simply given the direction of our culture, simply says the Department of Child Services can take away a child from a home if there's actual abuse. But declaring the child's, if parents don't go along with the child's pronouns, gender identity change, if they want to put the child in counseling, rather than affirming their gender confusion, that is not child abuse. A child should not be taken out of the home for something over ideology, and this bill addresses that because there was a case in Indiana where a child was taken from a home for that reason. Now, you may read and you may hear he was taken out of the home for anorexia. That's not true. I mean, that may be what they said, but the mother testified in committee that they had their son in care of a doctor and counseling. He was actually gaining weight. And frankly, when they took him out of the home, he reverted back to his problem with anorexia, which is unfortunate. So that's what some say. The real reason seems to be they removed the child because the parents did not believe in the LGBT gender ideology craze that's going on in our culture. And frankly, most people don't like that either. They'd rather have their child counseled and dealt with that, as most kids will grow out of that. And certainly kids can get treatment for that, regardless of the parents' views. But they shouldn't be removed because of a religious belief. The next bill is House Bill 1608. This is one you've probably heard about in the media, and I've certainly talked about it. What this says is that schools cannot teach on human sexuality of any type until the third grade, K through 3. Now, our human sexuality standards and law in Indiana says typically that sex education doesn't even start till 6th grade when science class goes through the study of reproduction. So there's no reason for a teacher to be talking to a student about this issue. And if a student has a question, the answer is you can talk to your parents about that. We've seen polls on this bill in Indiana and across the nation, and parents support this. Americans support this concept of protecting children's innocence at these young ages. So this bill would protect children from unnecessary topics when schools should be focusing on getting a child ready to read and to write and to do math and to do science in these early grades. So that's House Bill 1608. It passed 65-29 and will go to the Senate the week of March the 6th. House Bill 1608. That bill will probably go to the Senate Education Committee, and 1407 may go to the Families Committee. We don't know that quite yet. Could also go to possibly Judiciary because it deals with some other issues, but we'll see. The last bill I want to talk about is the one of the three bills that has not passed yet. It will come up Monday for amendments in the Senate and a final vote on Tuesday in the Senate. That's Senate Bill 12, concerning matter harmful to minors. This bill has been very controversial, both in the media and in testimony, and behind closed doors in the Senate as well. There's been a lot of negotiations back and forth on this bill with the author, who wants a certain version of the bill. The bill was changed in committee. It does not involve matter harmful to minors in libraries, which is not my preference, but I'm okay with the bill as is, and here's why. I don't want harmful pornographic material in libraries, but at least in a public library, a parent has the right to the ability to take their child there, to be with the child. They usually have age restrictions in parts of the library, and the parent can oversee what the child checks out or reads in the library. In a school, the child is a captive audience. They have to be there by law, and the parents aren't in the school where the child's reading something in literature class that may be inappropriate or sexually graphic. And this bill still addresses that. It also requires schools to come up with a complaint process. Now, the author of the bill is trying to change this. He's trying to put libraries back in. I don't think that's going to happen. But it will still apply to schools. There's about 15 amendments filed on this bill, so you're going to see a big debate on that Monday, going through those amendments from opponents of the bill, 2 amendments from supporters, and we'll see what happens. It's very possible that bill, because of all the controversy over it, all the back and forth on language, it could stall out. It could pass third reading. We just don't know. And if it does pass third reading, it'll go to the House, perhaps in this form, perhaps in a different form. But this is an issue they've dealt with for 3 years. And frankly, I think a lot of legislators are getting tired of it. They want to get something through on this to protect children, and I hope they do. I can support the bill as is. I appreciate what's being tried to be done to the bill to make it better. Sometimes you have to take what you can get and move on, and I think it's a step forward. But we'll see what happens. It could be improved. What we don't want to happen is have it stall out on Monday and not go anywhere and have to fight this battle next year. Frankly, I'm not sure after 3 years legislators want to bring this up again next year. So it'd be important to call on Senate Bill 12, to call your state senator on Monday and Tuesday at 317-232-9400. You don't have to call on 1001, 1407, or 1608 yet. You certainly can if you want to. Those bills, though, will kind of be in limbo for about a week before they go over to the Senate. And then you should call on House Bill 1001, if you like, on vouchers, 1407 on parental rights, and 1608 on human sexuality instruction and protecting minor innocent children at young ages. You can call late next week or the week after, March 6th, when those are picked up again. But Monday and Tuesday, it would be helpful if you called in support of Senate Bill 12, authored by State Senator Jim Toms. So that's what I have for today. Look forward to talking to you next week. We'll see what happens with Senate Bill 12 and a few other bills, and I'll cover those next week. But I hope you have a great weekend. Appreciate you joining us today. And again, thanks for reading my weekly emails as well that come out every Wednesday, which you can sign up for online. Again, have a great weekend. I'm Micah Clark with American Family Association of Indiana.